You were never taught the truth about sex, and it has cost you more than you realize. From the moment you became aware of your own body, someone else was already deciding what that awareness should mean. They told you it was dangerous, sinful, shameful, or they didn't tell you anything at all and let silence do the damage. You weren't educated, you were conditioned. And while they were busy shaping your understanding of sex into something you'd either chase blindly or suppress completely, they were stripping it of the one thing that made it sacred: your power. Sex was never just about pleasure. It was never just about biology, reproduction, or attraction. It was, and still is, your connection to something infinite, a current of energy that doesn't just run through you, it created you. The body is not separate from the soul. Desire is not the opposite of divinity. And when you finally strip away the programming, what's left is not shame, it's truth. You weren't born ashamed of your body. You didn't arrive in this world with guilt about your desires. That was given to you, and it started earlier than you think. Before you could name it, before you understood what it was, the system had already started working on you. The moment you showed curiosity about your body, someone recoiled. When you asked innocent questions, someone changed the subject. You learned slowly and silently that certain parts of you were off limits, that desire was dangerous, that pleasure was to be hidden. And you internalized that message, not just in your mind, but in your nervous system. You carried it into adolescence, into relationships, into the way you looked at yourself in the mirror. The programming didn't always come with direct words. Sometimes it came through absence, what wasn't said. Sometimes it came as jokes at school, shameful glances, distorted media depictions, or religious dogma that turned the body into a battleground between sin and salvation. What they didn't tell you is that this wasn't accidental. It was systematic. Because when a human being is disconnected from their sexual energy, they are easier to control, easier to manipulate, easier to shame into compliance. Your sexual energy is your life force, pure creative potential. It's the most potent fuel you have. And if they can make you fear it, if they can turn it into something dirty or dangerous, then they can turn you into something small and manageable. And it worked. You started associating your desires with guilt. You began policing your own body, your own thoughts. You learned how to perform, how to hide, how to fit into whatever version of appropriate society offered you. Sex became an act instead of an expression, a transaction instead of a transformation. And in the process, something sacred was lost. Not just your comfort with sex, but your connection to something deeper, to yourself, to source, to spirit. They've made you believe that sex is either entertainment or taboo, that it's either a distraction or a danger. But not once did they tell you that it's holy, that it's power, that it's your access point to something far beyond the physical. Because if they did, you'd stop outsourcing your worth, you'd stop asking permission to feel alive, and you'd start asking the questions that systems of power can't answer. Some truths about sacred sexuality are so potent they can't be confined to conventional channels. That's why we created the sanctuary, a space for unfiltered exploration and profound connection. Discover more at the link in the description and begin your journey of reclaiming your sexual sovereignty. You weren't born fragmented. That fragmentation was installed piece by piece. And now your work is to reverse it, not by rejecting sex or suppressing it, but by remembering what it really is, by reclaiming what's already yours. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about peeling off the conditioning until what's left is real, raw, and alive. You've never been broken, you've been bound. And once you begin to see how deep the programming goes, you can start to unravel it one layer at a time, not with shame, but with sovereignty. They told you that to be spiritual, you had to deny the body, that purity meant abstaining, and that desire was the enemy of enlightenment. You were handed an image of a spiritual person, detached, serene, untouched by longing, floating above the chaos of flesh. But that image was never yours. It was built to keep you disconnected from the very thing that could set you free. The body was never the problem was the story they told you about it. The separation of sex and spirit didn't happen by accident. It was a design perfected over generations. In many religious institutions, sex was seen as a threat to authority because sexual energy is primal, unpredictable, and powerful. It doesn't ask for permission, it doesn't obey. And people who are connected to their sexual truth don't bow easily. So to control them, the body had to become something to fear, Pleasure had to be reframed as sin. Desire had to be painted as a distraction. And so the split began. In one corner, the sacred, in the other, the sensual. You were told you had to choose, be spiritual or be sexual. You couldn't be both. You couldn't integrate. And if you tried, you were labeled impure, misguided, indulgent. But here's the truth. Spirit and body were never meant to be separate. They are not opposites. They are expressions of the same source. The body is not a prison, it is the temple. Sexuality is not a detour on the path to enlightenment. It is the path. Ancient wisdom knew this long before institutionalized religion got its grip on the collective psyche. Cultures around the world revered sexual energy as sacred. In tantric practice, the union of masculine and feminine wasn't just symbolic. It was literal, energetic, spiritual. The merging of opposites was a return to wholeness. In Taoism, the cultivation of sexual energy was a tool for longevity, vitality, and awakening. In Hermeticism, creation was seen as the divine impulse made manifest, macrocosm and microcosm reflecting each other. But somewhere along the line, that knowledge was buried, demonized, rewritten. What took its place were hollow rituals, moral codes, and shame-based doctrines that taught people to suppress the most natural parts of themselves in the name of holiness. But there is nothing holy about shame. There is nothing sacred about self-rejection. You cannot reach higher realms by denying the very vessel that anchors you here. The body is not in your way, it is your way. And so you internalize this false split. You tried to pray your way out of desire or suppress it under spiritual jargon. You called it ego or attachment, when really it was your own life force begging to be felt. You meditated to escape your body instead of to return to it. But disembodiment is not enlightenment, it's dissociation. And a spirituality that disconnects you from your physical self isn't awakening, it's avoidance. The truth is, you were never meant to choose. You were meant to integrate. You were meant to bring the sacred down into the flesh, to let the divine breathe through your skin, your breath, your being. This isn't about indulgence. It's about reverence. It's about finally seeing that your sexuality is not something to overcome. It's something to honor. Because the moment you stop splitting yourself in half, you remember what you were before they divided you, whole. You've been told that sexual energy is just lust, just hormones, just a reaction to attraction. But that's only the surface. What you've been experiencing is the shadow of something far more powerful, something ancient, raw, and sacred. Sexual energy isn't about craving, it's about creation. It is the blueprint of the cosmos, the invisible thread that connects all living things. Every tree, every animal, every star, every heartbeat, born from this force. You didn't create it, you are it. This energy, when seen clearly, is not just something you release or suppress, it's something you channel, something you cultivate. It's the fire that moves through your spine when you're inspired, the electricity behind your intuition, the aliveness that surges when you're fully present in moments of deep connection, whether sexual, creative, or spiritual. You've already felt it, you just didn't know what to call it. They trained you to see it as something primitive or sinful, because if you knew its true power, you wouldn't just change your life, you'd change the world. Across ancient traditions, this energy had many names. In India, they called it Shakti. In China, it was Jing. In Egypt, Sem. In the West, we reduced it to libido and buried it beneath layers of shame and performance. But no matter the name, the essence was the same. Pure, unfiltered life force. The power not just to create new life, but to awaken your own. It doesn't belong to men or women, to straight or gay, to anyone or anything. It's beyond identity. It's universal. And when it moves through you consciously, it's not about sex at all. It's about transformation. That's what they never wanted you to find out. Because someone who understands how to work with sexual energy, not just act on it, is someone who can't be easily controlled. That kind of energy gives you access to higher intelligence, deep intuition, and spiritual clarity. It heals the body, it clears the mind, it fuels creativity, and more than anything, it reconnects you to the parts of yourself that were buried under years of guilt, fear, and performance. But tapping into it requires unlearning everything you were taught. It's not about turning sex into a ritual or trying to force some ideal version of sacred intimacy. This isn't a performance or a technique. It's about listening deeply to your body, to your energy, to what moves through you when you stop trying to manage, suppress, or escape it. The breath becomes your guide, presence becomes your practice, and the body becomes the altar, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. You don't have to be in a relationship to access this energy. You don't have to wait for the perfect partner or the perfect moment. This is yours, always has been. Your capacity to feel, to create, to connect. It's already inside you. Every time you breathe with intention, every time you move with awareness, every time you embrace your desire without shame, you're remembering, reclaiming, reawakening. And the more you do, the more you realize that this energy is sacred, not because someone told you it is, but because you feel it. It pulses through your spine, your heart, your skin. It isn't dirty, it isn't something to hide. It's the same energy that births galaxies, and it lives inside you, waiting, ready, unafraid. All it asks is that you stop running from it. All it wants is to be honored, not handled, respected, not repressed. Because when you finally stop trying to control it, you meet the part of yourself that's always been free. Most people think orgasm is the end of sex, the climax, the reward, a moment of relief and release before rolling over and going back to sleep. That's how we've been taught to approach it. A quick burst of sensation, maybe a few seconds of pleasure, and then it's done. But what if that moment, that split second of stillness and surrender, wasn't the finish line, but a portal? What if orgasm, when fully understood, is one of the most direct experiences of ego death available to us in daily life? In those brief moments, the mind disappears, thought stops, the body opens. There is no you, no identity, no fear, no past, no future, just sensation, vibration, energy. For a second you're gone, dissolved into something wider, something that has no name. That's not just biology, that's transcendence. And it's always been right there, hiding in plain sight, disguised as something casual, something recreational, something we joke about but rarely understand. Ancient traditions knew this. They treated sex not as an act to rush through or avoid, but as a sacred tool for awakening. In tantric practice, the orgasm was not the goal. It was a doorway, a glimpse into the infinite. By working with breath, intention, and presence, lovers could extend that moment, not just in time, but in depth. The body becomes a temple, the breath becomes a bridge, and in that space, something profound begins to happen. You stop trying to perform, and you start to dissolve. The mask slips off, the ego softens, you become a presence itself. Western culture reduced orgasm to mechanics: how fast, how often, how intense. It turned something mystical into a competition. It became about outcomes, not experience. So we started chasing it. We became addicted to the peak, always hunting the next hit of pleasure, missing the entire point. Because orgasm isn't something to chase, it's something to surrender into. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that orgasm doesn't come from friction. It comes from connection, from energy, from presence, from letting go. What we call great sex often has less to do with skill and more to do with depth, with how safe we feel, how open we are, how willing we are to be seen. When two people drop their armor, drop the roles, and meet in that raw, unguarded place, that's when magic happens. That's when the body becomes a tuning fork, vibrating with something that feels divine. That's when orgasm stops being a release and starts becoming a revelation. Science has only just begun to catch up. During orgasm, the brain floods with oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins. Brainwave patterns shift. The boundary between self and other starts to blur. It mirrors the same neurological states triggered by deep meditation, breath work, even psychedelic substances. And yet we treat it like a throwaway moment, a guilty indulgence, attention to get rid of instead of the sacred reset it truly is. But to access this level of experience, you have to slow down. You have to unlearn everything you've been taught about sex being a race to the finish. You have to stop performing, stop trying to get somewhere, and start listening, start breathing, start feeling, not with your mind, but with your entire being. Because when you do, something opens, something ancient, something eternal. And it's not just in your partner, it's in you. Orgasm isn't the end, it's the beginning, it's a glimpse. And when you stop treating it like a goal and start experiencing it as a gateway, you'll understand something most people never do. Sex is not just physical, it's spiritual. It always has been. The path to reclaiming your sexual energy isn't paved with bliss. It's layered with wounds, wounds you didn't ask for, wounds you might not even remember, but ones your body never forgot. For so many people, sex isn't freedom. It's fear, it's a shame, it's pain wrapped in performance. And underneath that, there's silence, because most of us were never given the tools to talk about it, let alone heal it. We were taught to suppress, to endure, to pretend, so we did. And those unspoken experiences buried themselves deep, not just in memory, but in muscle, in breath, in the way we touch and are touched. Sexual trauma doesn't always come from obvious violence. Sometimes it's subtle. A moment you were shamed for being curious, a glance that made you feel dirty, a partner who crossed a boundary you didn't know how to voice, being told to cover up, being told not to feel, being told that wanting is wrong. Over time, all of this builds a map inside the nervous system. A map that says sex equals danger, that vulnerability equals risk, that surrender equals exposure. And the body obeys that map even when the mind doesn't understand it. When we carry this kind of trauma, it becomes nearly impossible to access the deeper layers of sex and spirituality, not because they aren't there, but because the doorway is locked and the key is safety. Without safety, the body doesn't open, the breath doesn't deepen, presence disappears. You're stuck in survival mode, going through the motions, detached, distracted, or dissociated. And this is where many people get lost. They think something is wrong with them. They think they're broken. But you're not broken. You're protecting yourself the only way you know how. And the healing doesn't come from pushing harder, it comes from softening into awareness. You can't bypass this work. You can't meditate your way around trauma. You can't spiritually rationalize it away. Healing happens when you meet the body on its terms, not the mind's. That means slowing down. That means listening to the places that ache. That means holding space for rage, grief, numbness, whatever wants to rise. Because those emotions aren't mistakes, they're messengers. They're evidence of where something was stolen from you, silenced in you, disconnected from you. And every time you allow yourself to feel what was once forbidden, you reclaim a part of yourself that was frozen in time. This is why true sexual healing is spiritual work, because it requires presence, it demands honesty, and it invites you to return to the places you were told to abandon. The body becomes the battlefield and the sanctuary. And it's in this space, raw, messy, real, that the alchemy begins. That you start to understand that your pain isn't separate from your power, that your sensitivity isn't weakness, it's wisdom, that the part of you that trembles is the same part that eventually awakens. And no, it's not quick, it's not linear. But every breath you take into the discomfort is a breath closer to freedom. Every moment of truth you speak, first to yourself, then to others, is a step toward wholeness. This is the part of the journey most people avoid, but it's also the part that holds the most transformation. Because when you heal your relationship with your sexuality, you're not just healing sex, you're healing your relationship with intimacy, with vulnerability, with embodiment, with trust. You're learning how to be safe inside your own skin again. And from that place, everything changes, not just in the bedroom, but in how you walk through the world. Sexual healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what was always whole, buried beneath the fear, the shame, the silence. And when you finally meet that part of yourself without judgment, without agenda, you begin to understand what real power feels like. Not force, not performance, but presence. And from that presence, the spiritual doorway begins to open, not above you, but within you. Most people have sex with their bodies, but never with their being. They touch skin, but never reach what's underneath. It's not their fault. They were never shown another way. They were handed scripts. This is what's sexy. This is how you perform. This is what you do to be desirable. So they followed those scripts, mimicking what they saw in films, repeating what they were told, measuring intimacy by noise, duration, and reaction. But none of that touches the soul. None of that takes you into the place where sex becomes sacred. Conscious sex begins where performance ends. It begins in stillness, in presence, in the choice to be fully there, to show up not just as a body wanting release, but as a being willing to see and be seen. In conscious connection, sex becomes less about what you do and more about how deeply you feel. Eye contact becomes a portal. Breath becomes a language. Silence becomes a presence. And in that space, the lines between you and the other begin to dissolve. What was once two people becomes one field of awareness, pulsing with something ancient and alive. When you meet another from this place, you're not just meeting their body, you're meeting their soul, their fears, their longing, their truth, and you're bringing your own into that space too. The masks fall away. There's no hiding behind roles, no escaping into fantasy. It's raw, it's real, it's sacred. You touch not just flesh, but memory, not just sensation, but spirit. You begin to understand that the body is not just for pleasure. It's a channel, a temple, a reflection of everything you are and everything you've forgotten. In this kind of sex, the ego doesn't survive. There's no room for control, no space for validation. The moment you try to perform, the magic slips away. Because sacred sex doesn't care about appearances, it cares about presence. It's a meditation, not a show, a prayer, not a game. You're not trying to get somewhere, you're not trying to impress. You're simply being, breathing, sensing, allowing. And the deeper you drop into that space, the more you begin to see your partner, not just as someone you desire, but as a mirror reflecting your shadows, your light, your depth, your divinity, and it's not always comfortable. Sometimes it brings things up, old pain, unspoken grief, vulnerabilities you thought you'd buried. But that's part of the awakening. That's part of what makes it real. Conscious sex is not just about pleasure, it's about truth. And sometimes the most sacred thing you can do is hold someone through their tears, breathe through their shame, or sit in silence while their heart opens in ways it never has before. This is the kind of connection no media script could ever teach. It's the kind that doesn't need words because the bodies are already speaking in a forgotten language, a language of pulse and presence, of rhythm and stillness, of surrender and safety. It's not about techniques or tricks. It's about trust. And trust can't be rushed. It's built moment by moment, breath by breath, until something clicks and you both drop into the same frequency. And in that space, time stops, the outside world disappears, and you realize that sex in its highest form is not an act. It's a ceremony, a remembrance, a return. You don't need candles, mantras, or special settings to get there. You just need to be fully present, to choose depth over distraction, to prioritize awareness over outcome. Because when you do, sex becomes more than sex. It becomes healing, it becomes awakening, it becomes the sacred experience it was always meant to be. Not an escape from life, but a return to it. Sex has always been more than physical, but you were never shown what lies beyond sensation. You were taught to chase the high, to reach the climax, to end with a release, and call that satisfaction. But what if sex wasn't an escape from the world, but a catalyst for changing it, starting with you? Sexual energy, when consciously cultivated, doesn't just move through the body, it transforms it. It doesn't just fuel pleasure, it activates power. It's not just chemistry, it's alchemy. Every time you engage sexually, you're playing with fire. Most people get burned because they were never taught how to tend that fire. They don't know that it can be directed, shaped, elevated. They don't know that this energy, if held, breathed, respected, can rise through the body like a serpent, igniting each energy center, clearing blockages, and awakening something primal yet divine. This is what the ancients called Kundalini, the coiled force, the sleeping dragon dormant in most but alive in all. When Kundalini begins to rise, it doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't ask permission. It exposes what's repressed. It breaks through illusions. It brings light to your shadows and breath to your buried truths. And one of the fastest ways to awaken it is through conscious sexual union, not just with another, but with yourself. This isn't about control. It's about communion. It's about opening to the possibility that every sexual act can be a ritual of rebirth. Every orgasm, a shedding of layers. Every moment of surrender, a step toward remembering your true essence. Most people leak their sexual energy. They give it away without thought. They burn it off in fleeting encounters, compulsive habits, or mindless repetition. They don't realize that every drop of that energy carries potential, that it can be stored, channeled, redirected into art, clarity, healing, vision. Imagine taking that same energy and using it to unlock your creativity, to power your intuition, to accelerate your growth. This isn't new age fluff, it's ancient truth. It's what initiates and mystics have known for thousands of years, hidden in secret texts and encoded in sacred symbols. Transformation through sexual energy isn't about abstinence or indulgence, it's about intention. It's about waking up to what you've been doing unconsciously and choosing to do it with awareness. It's realizing that this isn't just about sex. It's about life force, about vitality, about stepping into your full, unfiltered aliveness. And that kind of presence is rare. That kind of energy is dangerous to the systems that feed on your numbness, your repression, your conformity. Because once you realize you can generate this power within yourself, you stop seeking it outside. You stop being manipulated by pleasure sold as a product. You stop trading your energy for shallow validation. And in its place, you begin to rise. You begin to move with a kind of heat, a kind of clarity that others can feel even if they don't understand it. This is what spiritual fire looks like, not detached, not floaty, but rooted, embodied, alive. When you bring intention into your sexuality, everything becomes different. It's no longer a quick fix, a stress relief, a thing you do because it's expected. It becomes sacred, charged, creative. You're no longer just having sex, you're working with energy. You're sculpting your consciousness with breath and sensation. And in doing so, you become something unrecognizable to the version of yourself that used to live in shame or numbness. You become lit from within, and the world feels it. This is why you were never taught this, why no one showed you how to hold your power. Because a person who has awakened their sexual energy is hard to control. They're not addicted to the external. They're not seeking permission. They're tuned in, turned on, and impossible to manipulate. That's what makes this path revolutionary. Not because it's loud or rebellious, but because it's sovereign. And that's the one thing the system can't handle. A human being who no longer needs it to feel alive. You've been taught to split yourself, to keep your spiritual life in one box and your sexuality in another, to meditate in the morning and disconnect at night, to talk about presence and authenticity while performing behind closed doors. This division isn't natural, it's inherited, and it's made you believe that parts of you are incompatible with each other, that you have to choose between being holy and being human. But integration doesn't ask you to choose, it asks you to remember that you were never two. Radical integration means bringing all of you into the light. It means no longer exiling the parts that don't fit a spiritual aesthetic or a social expectation. It means honoring your instincts without shame, your pleasure without guilt, your desire without apology. It's not about being perfect, it's about being whole. And wholeness is messy, it's real, it's sacred in a way that's raw, not polished. When you stop hiding from your own power, something shifts. You stop needing approval, you stop chasing validation, you stop performing. And in that space, what emerges is truth, your truth. The kind of truth that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that doesn't need to be branded or sold. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, love differently, because you're no longer trying to be something for anyone. You're simply being. This is the essence of spiritual embodiment. Not floating above life, but being rooted in it, feeling it, living it. When you integrate your sexual energy into your spiritual path, you become more grounded, not less, more intuitive, more in tune with yourself, with others, with life. You become available to what's real, available to the moment, available to love, not the scripted version, but the one that rises in the silence when you're not trying to be impressive, just present. Integration also means recognizing when you've been outsourcing your wholeness, waiting for someone else to give you the experience of connection, hoping a relationship will complete you, or that a teacher, a course, a technique will unlock the thing you feel you're missing. But the truth is, the thing you've been waiting for has always been inside you, covered by conditioning, buried under shame, but never gone. And the moment you realize that, you take back your power, not just sexually, but spiritually. You realize you don't need to be fixed, you just need to be reclaimed. You don't have to become someone else to evolve. You just have to stop pretending you're not already whole. The version of you that you're becoming isn't new. It's the one that was always there, waiting to be remembered. This is the integration they don't teach, because it doesn't serve the system for you to feel complete. Whole people don't overconsume. Whole people don't depend on approval. Whole people don't follow empty rules. They create, they connect, they question, and they live. When sex becomes sacred again, not because someone tells you it is, but because you know it is, everything starts to recalibrate. You stop seeking moments of escape and start living in a state of connection. You stop splitting between who you are in bed and who you are in meditation. It all becomes one. And that oneness isn't theoretical, it's embodied. It's how you move, how you speak, how you breathe, how you touch the world. This is not about returning to some ancient practice or joining a spiritual movement. It's about returning to yourself, The self that existed before the shame, before the silence, before you were taught to break yourself into parts. That self is still here. It's been watching, waiting, ready to step back in, not as an idea, but as a lived experience, a felt truth, a presence that doesn't just think about wholeness, but radiates it. And when you walk from that place, you don't need to explain, you don't need to convince. You simply become the evidence that another way is possible, that sex and spirit are not enemies, they're not even separate. They are the same current expressed in different ways. One reminds you that you're human, the other reminds you that you're divine, and in their union you remember you are both. You were never disconnected from the divine. You were only taught to forget, told to look upward when you wanted to feel God, to climb ladders built by other people's rules. But the divine was never hiding in a cloud or locked inside a scripture. It was here in your body, in your breath, in the heat between your hips and the stillness behind your eyes. It's been here the whole time, whispering through desire, pulsing through pleasure, humming beneath the surface of every touch, every sigh, every moment you stopped thinking and simply felt. That's why the system had to sever you from it. It's why they taught you to divide your body from your soul. Because if you remembered that sex is not separate from spirit, you'd stop following their map. You'd stop trying to earn your way into wholeness and realize you were never broken to begin with. A person who understands their sexual energy as sacred doesn't beg for love, they embody it. They don't perform for acceptance, they radiate presence. They don't live from a script, they live from truth. The most dangerous thing you can be in a society built on shame is fully alive. And that's exactly what you become when you reunite with this part of yourself. Aliveness isn't just energy, it's awareness. It's the way your body responds to breath, to beauty, to honesty. It's the quiet knowing that you don't need anyone's permission to be here, to feel deeply, to take up space. And once that knowing is reawakened, no one can take it from you. The path forward is not about perfection. It's not about becoming some enlightened, sexually activated ideal. That's just another mask. This path is about being real, about being honest enough to say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here now. I'm ready to feel, to listen, to remember. Because remembering is what this has always been about, not adding something new to yourself, but stripping away everything that told you to hide, to shrink, to divide. You don't have to earn your sacredness. You were born with it. You don't have to perform spirituality to be divine. You already are. When you strip away the noise, the shame, the old stories, you find that you've been whole the entire time, you just forgot how to feel it. Let others chase the next method, the next rule, the next idealized version of spiritual sex. You walk a different path, one that doesn't need to be explained or validated, one that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It's a path that moves through presence, through embodiment, through remembering what's real. And when you live from that place, you become a mirror, not just for lovers, but for the world. A reminder that truth doesn't scream, it radiates. You don't need more techniques, you don't need another guru. You need to come home to the one part of yourself you were taught to fear. Because behind that fear is freedom. Behind that shame is sovereignty. And behind that desire is the divine. Sex is not separate from your spirituality. It's one of its purest expressions, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. It's human and holy. It's messy and miraculous. It's the fire and the silence, the ache and the answer. And if there's one thing this world needs now more than ever, it's people who are fully alive. Not performing, not conforming, but living, breathing, loving, creating from a place of deep, embodied truth. People who know that their body is not a distraction from spirit, but a doorway into it, that their desire is not shameful, but sacred, that their presence is not small, but infinite. So live from that place, speak from that place, touch from that place. Let the way you move in the world become your meditation. Let the way you breathe become your prayer. Let your body remind you again and again that you are not broken, you are not divided, you are not missing anything. You are always the temple, you are always the truth. If this journey has resonated deeply within you, then the exploration has only just begun. We offer resources and a community to support your continued awakening. Discover Embodied Awakening, our free guided meditation, available via the link below, and take the next step in reclaiming your sacred sexuality. If this message has touched your soul, share it and let your voice be heard. So, if there's one thing I hope you take away from all of this, It's that your sexuality isn't something to be ashamed of, suppressed, or outsourced. It's a sacred part of you, a powerful life force waiting to be reclaimed and integrated into your whole being. You have the power to rewrite the narratives that have kept you bound, to dismantle the conditioning that has fragmented your spirit, and to rediscover the inherent holiness that resides within your own body. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. What resonated with you the most? What challenges are you facing on your own journey to reclaiming your sexual energy? Leave a comment down below, ask a question, or share your own experiences. Let's create a space for open and honest conversation. And if you found this helpful, inspiring, or thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos on this topic and many others. We're exploring these themes in depth, and I can't wait to share more with you. Thanks for being here.